Okay. So, welcome to Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday. It's February. Oh my gosh, we are heading towards Valentine's Day. In Freedom School right now, we are doing relationships, which is one of my favorite topics because relationships affect every part of our life, right? Like every single part. So, it can impact how we feel so much because if shit's fucked up at work, if things are messed up at home, it can be super stressful. So we're doing that. But the last couple of episodes of Rebel Buddhist have been about manifesting your dreams and your desires, right? And I've been getting some communications like people feel torn between how to balance wanting to create this amazing, abundant life and being spiritual at the same time, because many spiritual traditions talk about how, like, well, I was raised Catholic, strict Catholic, like Filipino Catholic, right? Like, there they like nail themselves to the cross at Easter, like people do. It's crazy. So, but in that tradition, I was taught that money is the root of all evil and that it corrupts and that God prefers the poor. So you should actually be happy that you're poor. Because you're going to end up in heaven, like be fine suffering in this life because the next life will be even better. And then in Buddhism, we hear about like not being attached and not wanting things. So, like, how does that fit in if you want to start a business or something, right? Like, how do you grow? How do you make yourself comfortable amidst this whole spiritual lexicon, right? So, that's going to be very individual for everyone, right? Like, everybody's going to have their own comfort level of what they're able to tolerate. Okay. So, or not so much tolerate, but what they're going to feel comfortable with and still be in integrity with whatever your beliefs are. Because, I'll tell you right now that I have not seen that wealth and abundance corrupts. That is not the sort of um, defining factor. It's how we get there and what we do with it, right? So, oh, hey, more people hopping on. Hey, if you're on Facebook, send me some hearts, send me some love. Let me know that you're here, okay? So that I can see you. Plus, it helps other people see it. So, it's not the abundance, it's not the desire, it's not the wealth itself, it's how we get there and what we do with it. And when it comes to desire, it has a lot to do with, is it a healthy desire or an unhealthy desire? Okay? So, when we're looking at what is a healthy desire, what is an unhealthy desire, we need to think, how do we determine that? Right. And I think, I've seen people really misuse attachment and desire interpretations in a way that actually causes suffering in both directions, right? Like, we know that in the Noble Truths, for example, it says, okay, we're not supposed, like, suffering exists and the cause of suffering is attachment, right? So it's not that um, we want something, it's that we're attached to wanting something in order to feel better, right? And so when we look at it that way, we can say, look, desire in and of itself isn't bad, right? Being horny is not bad. We are born in a body. Look, y'all, if you're trying to get rid of desire, that does not work. Like, there's an analogy that I talk about in the podcast where it's like trying to not have desire is like hiding chocolate chip cookies because you're on a diet, but yet you're the only person in the world who knows where they're hidden. Right? It's like we are hardwired for desire. We are born in a body. Shit feels good. We have feel good neurotransmitters and hormones, right? And so remember the motivational triad. Our brain is structured for us to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and do what requires the least effort so we can save energy. So there's nothing wrong with desire per se. We're born to have it, right? It's what does it cause us to do? Do we end up hurting people? Do we end up creating suffering in ourselves because we don't allow ourselves to be happy until we have that? I mean, how many of you know someone who will not let themselves be happy unless they're partnered? Right? Every day is like, oh, woe is me, I don't have a partner, right? I've seen that. That is unhealthy because it is impacting your ability to be happy. There's an attachment there that's saying, I will only allow things to be okay in my world if I have that. That is unhealthy desire. That is unhealthy attachment. There's healthy attachment, right? Between a parent and a child. We cultivate that closeness, that intimacy. And when we have that relationship with our parent, it creates a healthy attachment where we then feel confident to go into the world and take risks and don't constantly fear being abandoned or something, right? And if we don't have that, it creates a whole bunch of attachment disorders, actually. So let's think about our desire and what we want. We want to create an abundant business. We want to buy a certain type of house or a certain car. We want to have sex with someone, right? So, healthy or unhealthy, right? Maybe we look at it like natural or like causing suffering too, right? like natural to want to have sex with someone, natural to want to be with someone, right? But am I letting it impact my ability to be happy in the world, right? Am I obsessing about it? Is it preventing me from showing up as a good person, right? And this doesn't just come from bodily desires like sex and food and alcohol or drugs. It can also come from attachment to our ideologies and our values in our mind, right? So when we think about food, it's natural to desire food, healthy to desire food. There's disorders where people don't desire food and they die. So, when does it become unhealthy? When the desire for food overtakes our mind, when it has us causing harm to our body with an unhealthy diet, right? Causing inflammation in our body, and and our attachment is keeping us from eating healthfully, right? Obviously with drugs and alcohol, that's an easy one, right? Like in terms of when like it's causing us to avoid dealing with our shit because we're buffering, or full on addiction, right? That's the other extreme. When I was first learning to meditate, Ani Rubina Cortan said when she quit smoking, she like looked at the cigarette and was like, I feel so free now that I am not needing this to be happy. And that's exactly what it's about, right? It's like our desire can be so healthy, but our attachment to needing that, right? Or our obsessive kind of desire is what causes the suffering. Like, there are people who can smoke once in a while, right? They desire it, they have it, they're not attached to it. They can take it or leave it, right? There are people who can have a drink once in a while. They just have one. They just have two. They can not drink when they don't feel like it. They can stop early, whatever. So when it becomes unhealthy, we've crossed that threshold either of harm to our bodies, but also not allowing ourselves to emotionally be at peace or be happy without that, without the lover, without the baby, without the big house, without the fancy car, without that certain balance in the bank, right? So there's nothing wrong with abundance in and of itself, okay? It is the issue when it creates suffering in us. So Jack Cornfield talks about one of his teachers, Nasagardata, I think is the way you pronounce his name. But he talks about how he says it's not desire that's the problem. It's that you don't desire enough. So just think about that for a minute. What does that mean? Desire is not the problem. I don't desire enough. I kind of thought about it for a while and it was like, oh, it's because I desire this, but not that. And that's where there's suffering. Well, I desire that person as my partner, but not this one here who totally wants to be with me, right? Or I desire that job, not the one I have. Your desire is not enough. I love this person, but not that person. So the problem with desire comes with the narrowing of what we desire, right? With the fixation on what we desire. Now, I'm not saying have sex with just anybody, choose anybody for your life partner, right? Right? We've already talked about that in other Wake the Fuck Up Wednesdays and in other podcasts. But we're talking about desire itself and what are its qualities and the sort of judgment people want to put on it of whether it's good or bad. Now, on the other extreme, there are people who go around and say to their partners, like, well, I don't want anything committed because I don't want to be attached to anybody, right? And they sort of take this spiritual high road about it, but it's really a spiritual bypass, right? It's really a spiritual bypass where they are pretending that they understand desire and attachment, yet are causing all kinds of suffering, right? To the other person, because they're putting it under this like, oh, well, I'm just not into attachment, right? Um, but there's no wisdom there in seeing how that attitude is affecting this other person. So they're letting their desire to have sex with this person, when they know it's going to cause harm to that person because that person's attached to them, right? Then they're letting their desire to be with that person get sort of washed away because they say, well, I have this higher ability to not be attached, and that's your problem if you do. And that's not really spiritually responsible either, right? Okay. So we've talked about desire. Oh, here's another cool thing about desire. So in Latin, its root means like moving away from our star. Isn't that beautiful? And Tara Brach's interpretation of that, which I think is accurate, is when we feel desire in a way that we're very attached for something, it's because we feel we have moved away from our star, from our truth, from our essence, and that we need that thing to come back home, so to say. But the trick is that we have it within us, right? So it's this sort of misinterpretation of the world when we have this attachment to a desire that we have. We feel we're away from our star. I just love that that analogy and how that's where the word desire came from, right? So, you know, in the spiritual lexicon where we're hearing attachment is bad, don't be attached, desire, you know, I mean, I've heard sort of monks and nuns talk about how they just reviled their bodies after some of their training because so much of it was, you know, how disgusting the body is and to not be attached to this world and not to enjoy anything, that we just shouldn't want any part of this. And a lot of this, I think, you know, comes from how I think is a misinterpretation of that. I feel like there's no reason for us to have been born in a body capable of such pleasure. There's no reason to have been around all of this beauty with granite peaks and blue oceans and soft, cuddly creatures and orgasms and all of these things if we weren't meant to enjoy it, right? So it's like we can enjoy those things and not be attached. We can, when we let go of the attachment part of the desire, we can arrive back to the present moment and fully enjoy what is in every present moment. Your desire is not enough. When you are seeing a gorgeous cloudscape with rainbows and a mist of rain, and it overtakes you with its beauty, be fully present for that and enjoy it. And then when you're in the subway and it's loud and it's stinky, be fully present with it. Don't have an aversion to it, right? So that's the idea. When we're narrowing our desire, when we're not desiring enough, when we're not allowing ourselves to fully be present with whatever is, that's the problem with desire. That's the problem with attachment, right? So you feeling me? Yeah. So let me just see here. Someone's commenting over here. So I want to see what they said. Oh, hey, Jeff, New York. What's up? Hey, Shells. Yeah, agree totally. Awesome. Yeah, exactly. And if you all have questions, you can ask too. So my approach to my spiritual life, which is all I'm sharing here, like I'm not some guru or something, right? I've had cancer twice. I have decided, whoa, like I'm seeing weird flashy things on Facebook. Anyway, hopefully you can still see me. But my interpretation is I was born here to make the most of this one precious life, to enjoy all of its bodily pleasures, to enjoy food, to enjoy sex, to enjoy beauty, and to not have aversion when it's not present. Because I don't control everything around that, right? So I really need to open up to what's possible here. You know, with Tantra, some people will say, oh, I practice Tantra, so it's okay. I realize the emptiness of doing drugs and having sex, and I practice Tantra, and so it's all good. And, you know, when someone was mentioning that at a teaching I was at in Nepal, the Tibetan Lama said, well, if you are a true practitioner of Tantra, you should also be able not just to drink wine, but to drink piss and find the same pleasure from the piss. You should be able not just to have sex with your lover, but to have sex with someone who repulses you and have the same pleasure, because then you are truly seeing the emptiness of all of those things. Your desire is not enough, right? So go forth and desire, my friends. We are hardwired for it, okay? The problem is just with the narrowing and needing that to be happy. And when we get attached to needing the world to be a certain way, remember, suffering comes from resisting what is happening in the present moment, okay? All right, that's what I got for you today. Sending you lots of love. I'll see you next week, and we're going to have a challenge later this week. I'm going to invite you to, okay? And it's going to be on how to find freedom when we're feeling trapped, kind of like during a pandemic, okay? All right, ciao.